Okay, the negotiation is over. Please stop negotiating and fill out the results. One person per team. Do this. There may be some confusion on the output. Let me explain it to you. The first question is, if there was an agreement, what was the agreement in numbers? Next is, who made the first offer? Next is, what was the buyer's first offer? Next is, what was the seller's first offer? And then, if there was no deal, what were the last offers? So agreement number, if there was an agreement, first offer, who made it, first offer by the buyer, what number, first offer by the seller, what number, and then last offers if there was no agreement. Take 10 minutes, and we'll start the debrief. 10 minutes to fill out the results for those of you who just finished negotiating. Okay, who has not submitted results? Who has not submitted results? Raise your hand. Who has not submitted results? Please submit them. Please submit them. Who else has not submitted results? Please submit them. Please submit the results. Who has not submitted results? Please take a couple of minutes and submit them. Okay, are we done? All right. Just give us a minute to get it up on the screen. Okay, will you put the presentation up, please? You tell them to put the presentation up.
Well, Stuart hasn't come in. No email come through. 我们把那个另外一个 PPT 打开。
Okay, so in case I'd like to sort of get you in the mood here.
Although I don't have the form.
What?
I don't have the table.
Well, it might take a while because it's complicated. If not, I'll just talk from it. Don't worry about it. Okay? So just to get you in the mood, this is a 1959 pink Cadillac. To get you in the mood. And so if that doesn't put you in the mood, let me help put you in the mood. So here she is, Marilyn Monroe. So rode in the 1959 pink Cadillac. So if that doesn't get you in the mood and you like cartoons, here we are, 1959 pink Cadillac. So those are the sort of the mood of the car. So what this case is designed to do is to show you how to find the bargaining range, deal with the alternatives to agreement, use standards, collect information, prepare and use research insofar as you could, form relationships even in transactional situations, get commitments, get conditional commitments, use your time wisely, find creative solutions, and deal with dishonesty. And so those are the things the case is supposed to show. Just let me know when you get it, all right? It might take a little bit. So we don't have the numbers yet, but I can tell you a few things about the numbers that should help me. The lowest result we got was $400, and the highest result we got was, hold on a second. I'm not going to keep you in suspense. The highest result we got was $70,000. 70,000. So between 400,000 and 70,000.
我们现在做的事情就是把这个表啊，每个人的成绩啊，给大家 copy 出来之后呢，待会儿投到大屏上，每个小组的成交的价格都知道啊，都能看见。大家稍等一下。
Okay, so $400 to $70,000. So we have a little bit of work to do here, and I want to talk about what happened here. Now, what's the difference? Why did this happen? There's a couple of reasons it happened. The first thing is, what's the bargaining range for this case? And a lot of you made a mistake here, but let me show you the bargaining range. No, I want to show the bargaining range. I did. Here we go. This is actually the bargaining range, even though a lot of you are outside of it. The seller and the buyer each have their own identical pink Cadillac, and they don't know that. The seller doesn't have any offers, only has an offer from a junkyard for $275, and an insurance value is $550. The buyer has a pink Cadillac that was wrecked in an accident, and they need $2,000 for doors and $6,000 more in parts to restore the car. So what does this tell you about the risk here? Would you say the bargaining range is narrow or wide? It's wide. Would you say that the parties have the same or different information? Different information. And so, if you have a wide or uncertain bargaining range, and you have different information, if you make the first offer, you will negotiate against yourself. And so in this case, in fact, when we show the numbers, when the seller made the first offer, they got less than when the buyer made the first offer. So you don't want to make the first offer unless you have a lot more information. So here, let's see here. So here we have the normal case, where there's a 100% penalty if you make the first offer. When the buyer makes the first offer, they pay $4,500. When the seller makes the first offer, they pay $2,100. So there's a big penalty if you make the first offer. How do you know when to make the first offer? Well, let's see here. If you have a lot of information, you open if you both know the same or you know more. If you don't have much information, you don't open. And so a number of you opened when you didn't have a lot of information. And so that's an important point to make here. Another point to make is, if the bargaining range is $275 to $8,000, why did we get buyers who paid $10,000, $10,000, $9,700, $70,000, $13,000? Why did buyers pay more, and why did sellers offer $123,000, $100,000, $70,000, $75,000? What's going on here? What's going on here? Why are the sellers offering that much money for this car? Because they think it's a fully restored 1959 pink Cadillac. Is this a fully restored 1959 pink Cadillac? No. It's a little better than a junker. So why would the buyer pay anything above $8,000 for a car that they have to restore themselves? What is the difference between this car and a fully restored 1959 pink Cadillac? It is thousands of hours of labor and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of parts. So if you're a buyer and you paid more than $8,000, and a lot of buyers did, you bought something that you still have to restore. As an entrepreneur, you gave all of the enterprise value or much of it to the seller. Why would you do that? When the seller says, I want $70,000 for this car, the buyer should say what? This car bears as much resemblance as a fully restored 1959 pink Cadillac as it does to a horse. It's a different animal. Just because it's called a Cadillac doesn't mean it's a fully restored pink Cadillac. So a lot of the buyers who paid more, they paid too much. Can you show us now the numbers, please? We need to see the numbers. Okay, those are some numbers, but not the right ones. All right. Now, if you look here, you see the buyer in team number 5, buyer in team 5, they paid, you don't have this over, you've got to move it over. I need to see the left column. Okay, here we go. Okay, but there's, all right, so the buyer, okay, so the buyer in team, wait, what are you doing? Here we go. All right, now, wait, you just had it. Okay, so all right, so if you look at team number 5, the seller wanted $1,230,000. What? And the buyer came back with $28,000. What? And ended up paying $13,000. What should the buyer say? The buyer should say, look, I congratulate you on your extreme offer, but I have my own pink Cadillac that needs work. I got $2,000 I need for doors. I have $6,000 I need for parts. Why on earth should I pay you more than $8,000? So if they're outside the bargaining range, tell them your bottom line. Because $8,000 is fine. The seller is dreaming. Dreaming. Same thing with team number 25, 27. Scroll down a little bit. Oh, here we go. Okay, stop. 41, 55. Okay, keep going. There we are. My favorite, 63, 70,000. Okay, and so I think you get the idea. Okay, so you don't want to overpay if the car is not worth it. So that means what you have to do when you're an entrepreneur and you're buying and selling things is you have to say, what am I really buying here? This is important because a lot of buyers, they paint a rosy picture of something that might happen if you get workers and technology, but it's just a piece of paper. It's a pipe dream. And you need to know what you're buying. And as a buyer, you're buying a junker car that needs restoration. That's what you're buying. And if you overpaid, you gave all of your profit from restoring this car to the seller, who gets a windfall. So, how many of you are either involved in buying companies or hope to buy a company? Anybody? Raise your hand.
谁现在要买一个公司的举手，或者要被卖掉的？
Okay, there's something called due diligence. You need to know what you're buying. And so that's what we have here. I do not understand why the buyer only offered, I think that's right here, seller offered $275. Okay, so here in team number, let's see, 67. Let's see, 67 here.
67组在哪儿？67组。
67. Okay, so the buyer offered 300 and the seller offered 200. Those numbers, of course, are way too low. So you have to know what you're buying. You have to know what you're selling. Now, it certainly is possible. It certainly is possible for the seller to get information out of the buyer that will cause the seller to increase their offer. I once had one of these negotiations, and the seller said to the buyer, well, why do you want this car? And the buyer said, well, I've got my own pink Cadillac that needs to be restored. I need doors that cost $2,000 and parts that cost $6,000, and so that's $8,000. And the seller said, well, okay, how about $8,000 then? And the buyer said, okay. That's what you don't want to do. You release information that brings you closer to your goals, and you not want to do that. Okay, so here we have a case where the seller made an offer of $1,000. Let's go to team 13, please. 13.
13到13行去，就13号那个组去。13。
Team 13. Okay, and you see the seller offered $1,000, and they wound up with less, of course. And then the buyer in team 7 offered $5,000, and they ended up paying more. And so clearly, you don't want to make the first offer unless you know a lot more about the situation and what the other party thinks. Okay, let's go back to the presentation,
回到
please.
刚才那个 PPT。
Okay, so let's say the seller says to the buyer, well, whatever you've got for your car, or you think you can get for your car on your own, I've got a whole car here, and you don't have to look for any of these parts. And so therefore, you have finding costs. And I give you a one-stop shop. And so therefore, it's much better if you buy the whole car from me than look around for the parts, if the buyer makes a low offer. So I've got a question for you, and that is, what case can you make that the finding costs for these parts for the buyer are zero? Why are the finding costs for the buyer zero for this car? Is the buyer a professional car restorer? No. It's a hobby. What do you pay for your time for a hobby? Nothing. So therefore, the buyer should say to the seller, this is a hobby, I don't have to pay finding costs. Unless, of course, you say to each other, why don't we go play 500 RMB worth of basketball? Which is not something you say, because it's a hobby. And so that's how you want to look at this. If you're the seller, you also want to ask, does this say, let's get this straight here. Okay, I think we want to go back a little bit. Here we go. Okay. You want to ask, why has this person showed up to buy a 50-year-old car? And you want to be careful of extreme offers, because extreme offers generally kill deals. So the highest price ever offered for this car before today was $1 million, no deal. Lowest price was zero, no deal. Highest price ever paid was $250,000. Lowest price ever accepted was zero, which I don't understand since the seller can get $275, but there you are. Okay, antidotes to extreme offers. Use standards. What is this car worth? It's a car that has to be restored and might be worth a lot someday. It's a 60-year-old car. It's fully depreciated. Those are the kind of standards that you want to use. So let me now ask my favorite result here, which is team number 67. Now, 60.
我们看一下这张表，67组
，63. Team 63.
63组。
Where's the seller from Team 63? How did you manage to offer $130,000 for this car? Where did you get that number? Tell us. We're interested to know.
63组起来一下，63组。
Where did that number come from?
不好意思啊，站起来，63组站起来，你们俩站起来，对，说一下怎么回事。So you have a question for them?
That was my question.
Which is, yeah.
How did you manage to offer $130,000 for a car to which your alternative to agreement is $275?
大家好，我这边是卖家，然后他是
We got that
买
part.
家。然后的话，我出13万的话，因为我是看到这个市场价值的话是3万5到10万，但是我心里的一个线的话，我是希望是能谈到5、6万，所以我要把这个价格我要翻1倍，我要翻到比市场价要去高，然后的话我给空间给他去砍价。
All right. So if you can get it, that's fine. What I want to know is, why did the buyer pay $70,000 for a car when their alternative to agreement is $8,000?
解释一下，为什么你8000块钱就能办的事儿，为什么要花7万块钱？
因为从一开始他上面讲了一句话，我被他严重误导了。他说你是一个喜欢寻找和修理旧车的狂热爱好者。
Right. And how much does it cost to repair the car? It's in the case $8,000. So, okay, so let's go into a store and buy ourselves a suit. And they say, it's 3,000 RMB for this suit of clothes. And I say, why don't I pay you 50,000 RMB? So there's no reason to do that. In other words, if you've got $70,000 lying around to pay for a car worth $8,000, for which the seller would accept $275,000, why don't you make the seller happy and pay them $10,000?
问题就是时间，教授。
And then wait, and then take the other 60,000 and go to Hainan on vacation for 2 months.
我在这里边的信息拿到的、读出来的更加重点的是，我关注到了时间的价值，就是我会感觉它里边一直在强调
But wait a second. This is a hobby.
就是对我非常理解教授刚才说的那个逻辑，然后这个你说到那个我是一个 hobby 这个问题，就是正是因为我是一个狂热爱好者，所以我希望快一点拿到车。
不差钱是吧？
Do we think that's a pretty weak excuse? Do we think that's a pretty weak excuse?
你们
That's a pretty weak excuse. Okay, thank you both very much. Okay. Okay, now, did anybody have a problem where nobody made the first offer? Nobody would make the first offer.
有没有？
Okay.
举手。
Okay, put up the presentation again, please.
再回到那个 PPT。
So if nobody makes the first offer, then what you can do is you can then make an extreme offer by apologizing for it first. You can say, well, I don't know what these cars are worth. How about $100,000? And when they complain, you say, well, you must have some number in mind. Now, what happens if they make an offer that you love and you just accept it? Let me see if we can find one here that you love. They made an offer that you love and just accepted it. I don't really see any here. Okay, well, this is a good learning point. What if you say, and you're the seller, I want to sell this car for $1,000. And the buyer says, yes! How will the seller feel? Bad. Right. So you want to be careful not to expose your surprise so that you look like, can you put the presentation up again?
好，再回到 PPT。
So you look like this. Okay, so you sort of don't want to express your surprise. So before the negotiation, practice being surprised. In other words, they say $1,000 and you're the buyer and you go, Then you go into the next room, close the door and go. Then you come back into the room and you go, Okay, so you practice not being surprised. Or you say, is that your best offer? Those are the sort of things you do. Because if you don't do that and you express surprise there, then the seller who offered $1,000 and you celebrated will say, oh, that was for the left front tire. Now, for the rest of the car, it's going to cost some more. So practice not being surprised. Okay. Now, who felt that they were lied to in this negotiation when the seller said, I have another offer? Who felt that the seller told them they had another offer and they felt they were lied to?
有吗？
I'm sure somebody
有
was.
人可以举手啊，就是撒谎的，你觉得对方撒了谎的。
Okay. Well, it often happens that the seller says to the buyer, I have another offer for $5,000 and gets the buyer to pay more than $5,000. What's wrong with that? That is called commercial fraud in any country. And there are laws in China, in the U.S., etc. Triple damages. You can't lie about other offers if it's untrue to cause the other party to pay more. You can say, I have other opportunities, etc., but the courts in almost all countries do not want to give sellers an incentive to lie. So you want to be careful about that because people can also test you about that. Okay? More online. You don't have to be completely open, and you can also say, I'm not comfortable with that offer, and you can also be incremental. Let's try something else. What is the junkyard buying? If you say as the seller, I have another offer, is that really true? What does it say on the paper if the junkyard buys the car? Does it say one pink Cadillac, $275? No. It says scrap metal, $275. So you have to be careful that the other party is not misled. If any of you do public offerings in almost any country, and you may be involved in one in your future, there are warranties and representations that everybody has to sign that says that each party promises that the other party, under all the facts and circumstances, will not be misled by your statements. It's a very high standard. So you have to be careful that they're not misled because a judge will unravel the deal and you will get in trouble. Okay. Another way to test lying, we'll skip to this one, is you can say to the other party, if they're asking for a high price, I'll tell you what, I'm going to get myself a third-party escrow agent, and I want to tell them the highest price I can pay. And I want to give them a blank check to pay up to that price. And I will pay you 10% more than the other offer you say you have. All you have to do is prove to them that you have another offer. And if you can't, I'm going to know you're lying. People can test you if you're lying. So you want to be careful about that. Now, there are some creative, this is collaborative results, right? Okay. These are collaborative results, okay. So, anybody do anything like this in this negotiation? So you don't have to do it, but I talked this morning about collaboration. And so if you're not sure whether the car is going to get restored and who's going to pay what, you can do these things with each other and you can get more out of the deal. That's what I meant this morning when I said being creative and with the other party and collaborative and getting some more out of the deal. Now let's look at some of the other agreements here and see what we have here. If we can find a relatively low seller offer or a high buyer offer. Let's say, okay.
Do you want the form now?
I'm
Projected? The form projected numbers? Do you want the
Not
numbers
yet,
on the screen?
Not yet. Give me a second here. Okay. Okay, yes. Put up the form again, please. Let me see number 20.
20组。
Now you see the seller at number 20, they offered $500 because they thought their alternative to agreement was $275, and they realized that the car was not a fully restored car. And so what I would do if I were the seller there is I would not make the first offer, because clearly the buyer might make a higher offer. So let's take, for example, a case, team number 6. Go to team 6, please.
第6组的。
And you'll see that the buyer made the first offer, and they made a $5,000 offer. So, again, not enough information. Let them make the first offer. I actually once had a student at Columbia Business School. We were discussing this. And he said, so I went to buy a dining room set, chairs and tables, with my wife. And I thought that the cost of this dining room set would be $3,500. And so instead of making an offer around that, I said to the salesperson, what is it that you will sell this dining room set for? And the salesperson said, $1,000. And the student at Columbia Business School said, I was so surprised I couldn't speak. I was speechless. I went, Bob, 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 Bob. And the seller then said, well, how about $900? And he said, I was still surprised. And the seller says, how about $800? And he said, I started to get out some words. And the seller finally said, how about $750, no tax, and we'll deliver. So that's the problem if you make the first offer, rather let them make the first offer. Okay, let's scroll down a little bit here. Okay, so team number 42. How is it that the buyer in team 42 came to make a $500 offer when your alternative to agreement was $8,000? That would qualify in my mind as an extreme offer. Where's the buyer in team 42?
那个 42 42组的买家是谁？站起来。42组的买家。
How did you come to make an offer of $500, which is a very low offer for a buyer?
因为我是跟我的卖家说，我是作为一位大学生，然后的话，我爱好的就是这种修这些车，这样的一个角度，然后我出$500的时候，他觉得也很高兴，然后我作为买家而言的话，我认为我的一个空间就是我原先2年前买的是$1700。然后后面我要维修的一个费用是6000加2000，所以我觉得我出500，觉得也很开心了。我是一直在挖需求让他出价，但是他一直不出价，所以只能我先出价。然后我就是1700的话，我出个500，觉得已经也挺划算了。谢谢。
Okay. Okay. We're going to do a little bit more on this and then we'll. Okay, so that's pretty good. But of course, if I'm now you got away with it because the seller's alternative to agreement was only $275. What if the seller's alternative to agreement was $5,000? What should the seller say? The seller should say, I'm really sorry for you, poor university student, but this car is worth $5,000. Go buy a motorcycle. So, they want to test you a little bit on that. Okay, let's look a little further here. And all the rest, I think, are pretty much the same. So let's put up some, would you put back the presentation here? I want to put up some lessons here for you to think about from this case, and this will certainly help you in your lives and careers. First of all, if the bargain, people always tell you to make the first offer and anchor them, and that's not true. And I hope you now see that it's not true. Only make the first offer if the bargaining range is narrow and well-defined, and there's hardly any benefit from doing that because the bargaining range is narrow and well-defined. Usually, if you make the first offer, you will negotiate against yourself. And so, get some more information about them and how they value things, or let them make the first offer. That's what you want to do. Be careful of extreme offers. They tend to kill deals. Find standards. Let me put the next one up here. What is this actually worth? Find that out. Suggest an exploration for what things are worth. You can look around and find what things are worth. Why just accept their language for it? Question their standards. Where did you get that from? So when the $70,000 or $130,000 offer was made, the buyer should say, where did you get that? This isn't that kind of car. So you want to question their standards as much as you can. Next. Don't walk away from a deal better than the alternatives, even if it doesn't meet all your initial goals. There are plenty of deals here that you could do. Next lesson. Focus on them and their own pressures that they might have. See if you can find that out. Decide what their motives are. Try to think about how they view the world. If they criticize your property, and this often happens in cases, people will criticize your car, it has a dent, they'll criticize your company, etc. I tend not to stand for that. I tend to say to people, are you criticizing my property in order to pay less for it? I don't let people get away with that. I also don't let people get away with good cop, bad cop. You know what good cop, bad cop is? Where one person is nice and the other person is not nice, and they say, if you don't deal with me, then you're going to get them. That doesn't work so well either. Because good negotiators will call it out. Somebody tries to play good cop, bad cop on me. You know what I say? Oh, you're playing good cop, bad cop on me. How interesting. I will call it out. Or I will say, don't seem to be getting your story straight on how you're treating me. You want to take a break and talk to each other? I tend to say, oh, what's going on here? Okay, process issues. List the issues that you're going to talk about. Look for components that are unequally valued, like using the car for weddings. Let's see what else we got here. Ask questions to find out their real motives. And finally, you want to be careful about inflexibility over standards. You want to try to find out who they are, and you want to try to solve problems jointly with them. So that's the Pink Cadillac. If I were to sum up your performance here, I would say that a lot of you did not realize what you were buying or selling. This was a car that's old and needs to be fixed up. So a lot of the buyers overpaid. A lot of the sellers made extreme offers and you got away with it. The problem is there is a tomorrow, and when the buyers overpay and they find out, they'll never deal with you again. So you want to be careful about that. I think you should be more careful also about who makes the first offer, as I mentioned. You also can get more information from them by asking questions, and then you can make the offer. And then finally, there's a lot of things you can be collaborative about if you're more creative. So even in a simple case like the pink Cadillac, there are a lot of different things you can do. And as I said, mostly know what you're buying and know what you're selling. Don't just take their word for it. So that is the pink Cadillac case. Usually what I want you to do, now is I'd like you to talk to the person that you just negotiated with for 5 minutes. And I want you to find out, I want you to decide, what would you do differently now in the real world to get more? And so we'll ask for some volunteers. Take about 5 minutes. Let's see what you learned from this case. Talk about it and decide what you would do differently in the real world, and then we'll ask what you learned. So the person you just negotiated with, talk to each other and decide what you learned from this case you're going to apply to the real world.
5分钟的时间啊，跟你的谈判伙伴讨论一下。
Take another couple of minutes, and then we'll get some feedback. Let's go around the room and see who learned some things from this case or some things you learned today, including this morning, that you're going to make sure you implement it in the real world. Let's start with this table. Who's got a learning point from this morning or this afternoon that you're going to be sure now to use in the real world?
Table number 1. Is
this table number 1? Yes. Who's got something that they're sure they're now going to use and do differently than they did before? Will you do everything the same as you did before today, or will you do something different? Will you trade some items? Will you not make the first offer? Will you try for more collaboration? What is it? Yes, tell us, please.
你有什么所得？然后如果下次再做这个事儿，你会怎么样不一样的去做？
好，这个感谢教授给这个机会分享。因为首先这个在这一次这个买卖谈判当中呢，我是作为买方的，这个我是觉得我只是纯粹是为了达成这个交易这个目标，就是把我的希望传来到。
Okay, I'm with you. Okay.
我没有想到，就是说还有更多种的合作结果，这是今天我学到的。因为有可能就是说我有另外一种合作，我把我的车就是说配件，把它修到对方的车上去，对方的车变成这个更完善之后呢，可以当古董的价格来卖，这提高了价值，然后他还给我分一半，一分成，这另外一种合作方式会达到我们双方谈判双方利益最大化。对。
Sure. And so given that, now in your life, what will you do differently when you do deals? What's the sort of thing you will say to other parties to help you be more creative?
如果是就说在实际生活工作当中呢，可能就会受今天上课的启发，我就会多一种思路，不一定会只照着一种思路的结果去谈判或者合作，可能会在我这边就会出 A、B、C 3个方案以上，就选择合作的机会可能就更大，机会大。
That's great. Good. Excellent. Thank you.
谢谢。
So one of the things I often say to the other party in negotiation when we finish talking is there more here? In my team, in my company, after we finish coming up with all the ideas we have, I have everybody sit back, put their feet up on the table, and spend 5 more minutes, and we get a lot more ideas. There was also a very interesting study in England a few years ago that said when you are brainstorming, coming up with ideas, the more bad ideas you have in the beginning, the more good ideas you have in the end. Because bad ideas show people what they don't want, and it helps them think about things that they do want. So don't criticize anybody's ideas until nobody has any ideas left. That also, something like that was said by Linus Pauling, a Nobel laureate. So